Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the grey. Today's video, we're going to talk Age of Sigmar narrative play, and today we're talking Path to Glory and the Stormcast Eternals. In this video, we're going to go through exactly how to get you started in an Age of Sigmar narrative play Path to Glory campaign, be that by yourself in a one-player mode of the campaign, which is completely doable, or with playing with some mates, and hopefully give you some ideas and some help to getting your Stormcast, getting that narrative built and underway for you to build upon it by yourself as well, and just run you through all the different tools we have for Stormcast Eternals, how things work narratively for them, so you can build a nice, strong thematic force that will also be fun to play on the tabletop. Now, with this, to start with, we've got the Path to Glory overview up. These are the 5 steps, the 5 major steps you will take in trying to build a Path to Glory force. Now, these 5 in order are choose your faction and realm. Obviously, Stormcast Eternals for our faction is going to be the focus of this video, but you also choose sub-factions and all that sort of stuff here, so Hammers of Sigmar, or in the case of Stormcast Eternals, they have some cool special rules they can use in that as well. Realm-wise, there's not a lot that this actually means a lot for, other than your own personal background. Where in the mortal realms is your faction, your army coming from? That's what that is there for. You then, step 2, will choose your starting size, which can be literally anything you want. You can have games as small as you want, as 600 points, all the way up to playing like 2,000 point armies straight from the get-go. So you can play whatever size games you want. With this, you also choose territories, and this is based pretty much upon your starting size. Now, territories are important to pick because step 3 is picking your order of battle. This is where you're effectively picking your army list, or the units you can use within the campaign to begin with. Step 4 is core enhancements. These are the enhancements you would generally get when playing a regular and building a regular Warhammer Age of Sigmar army. And step 5 is picking your first quest. These are pretty much what your story will be built around for your faction. So once you've picked all of that, you're ready to play some games. So we're going to go in depth. We're going to talk about each one of these in turn, in specific about the Stormcast Eternals. So let's get cracking on into it. And so, first of all, step 1, choose your faction and the realm. For the purposes of this video, as I said, we're going to be looking at the Stormcast Eternals, but this isn't all we need to do faction-wise. Now, you can choose certainly to not pick a sub-faction and just play your army rules straight as they are, but once you've selected your faction, normally you will pick a sub-faction. Now, Stormcast Eternals can do this a little bit different to some other armies. So they can pick pre-existing sub-factions if they want to, but they have this narrative play version which is called Tenants of the Gladiatorium, which effectively allow you to create your own Stormcast Eternals Storm host, which is sort of like their brotherhoods that they're a part of, to get your own particular rules for them, which will just allow you to really start creating that narrative from the get-go. How you do this is, first of all, you need to come up with a name for your Storm host, and maybe this name is going to spur on what you pick, or maybe you can sort of move to picking the tenants, which is the next step first, and then pick a name based on the tenants that you pick. So, you know, you can have these two things match. You know, if your Stormcast Eternal is going for, say, the Beast Hunters tenant from Tenants of the Hammer, maybe you are going to be called the Beast Slayers, or the Slayers of God Beasts, or something like that as a name. You know, you can use that narrative there to make your name. Now, so first of all, you need a name, and this name will become a keyword for your faction. So if any point I'm saying Storm host units in this video, I'll be referring to this as the keyword that you've picked, whatever your Storm host is called. Now, you then get to pick 2 tenants from a variety of different lists, though you can only pick 1 tenant from each list. Now, first of all, we have the Tenants of the Hammer. These are generally all offensive-based ones, so you have Beast Hunters, Champion Hunters, and the Obliterating Storm. All of these are going to provide you with +1 to hit, but in various different circumstances. For Beast Hunters and Champion Warriors, it is monster and hero models specifically in that order. Beast Hunters help you get +1 to hit against monsters, and Champion Warriors +1 to hit when you're targeting heroes with your Storm host units. The Obliterating Storm is a bit more universal. You add 1 to hit rolls made by friendly Storm host units, so long as you've made a charge in the same turn. So while you're not getting it all the time against particular units, you are getting it every time you charge. So you've got a cool little bunch of abilities there. The next one is Tenants of the Shield. These are much more defensive-based buffs, as I guess the name would suggest. Now, first of all, you have Relentless Fighters. If any wounds caused by attacks with weapons that have a damage characteristic of 1 are allocated to a friendly Stormhost unit, you add 1 to save rolls for that Stormhost unit until the end of that phase, unless that Stormhost unit has made a normal move, retreated, ran, or made a charge move in the same turn. Effectively, if you stay still and you hold your ground and your opponent hits you with damage 1 weapons, you are going to get +1 to save. A pretty solid little buff. Celestial Radiance is simple. All your Stormhost units will have a ward save of 6+. I think this is a really solid one. Stormcast Eternals are a little bit susceptible to mortal wounds. It is one of their major weaknesses. So this one may be a little bit more of the competitive pick, but you know, if you're maybe these holy sort of warriors, or you're these warriors that never say die, never give up, this could be certainly one for you. Unstoppable Determination. This is great if you want to include monsters in your army. Now, I will say that there is definitely some ways that monsters become cool when you bring them in later, when your characters earn them, but there's nothing stopping you taking monsters straight away. But maybe if you are playing with a character that can eventually ride on a monster, this might be something that appeals to you. You subtract 10 from the number of wounds suffered by friendly Stormhost monsters to a minimum of 0 when determining which row to use on their damage table. And lastly, we have Here We Stand. You can reroll battleship tests for your friendly Stormcast. If your Stormcast are the most indomitable thing in the world, you know, you're not going to fail battleship tests. Your warriors are never going to run away. They're going to hold their ground down against all odds. This could be the one for you. And so, lastly, we have Tenants of the Tempest. These are a lot more either movement-based or utility-based effects. So, to start with, first of all, we have Swift Strikers. This just adds 1 to outrun and charge rolls. If you've got a Stormcast Eternals army, especially maybe one if you're using things like the Vanguard Auxiliary Chamber, which is, you know, the scouts and the forward advance parties of the Stormcast Eternals. If you're using something like that, maybe this is one you want to go for, or, you know, you're using a cavalry-focused force. One Step Ahead is another one. Friendly Stormcast units can retreat and still charge in the same turn. Once again, it sort of suits those style of armies, cavalry or your Vanguard Auxiliary Chamber, but it can also field and sort of represent a chamber that is maybe more fluid, isn't such a rigorous battle line, is maybe more guerrilla tactics, maybe a chamber that is, you know, really prevalent in fighting in the realms of Gairan or the realms of Shyish, where, you know, the forest and the mists and the caverns are constantly changing and confusing everyone all over the place. Eye of the Storm. Enemy units within 3 inch of friendly Stormhost units cannot retreat. Maybe this is just, you know, your warriors this impeccable thing and you've just got this constant march that your opponents can't really retreat because you just crush them into the ground. And lastly, Masters of Heavenly Lore. Each time a friendly Stormcast Stormhost priest or wizard attempts to chant a prayer or cast a spell, if any chanting or casting cast rolls were a 1, you can re-roll them. If you're definitely going to go for wizards and you're going to have lots of wizards and lots of priests, or lots of both, this could be the one for you. Now, Stormcast Eternals do have an additional rule called the Guardians of the Heavens and Shield of the Mortal Realms. This is between choosing Scions of the Storm or Stormkeep. Now, this is an army-wide allegiance ability that lets you play Stormcast Eternals in 2 very different ways. Scions of the Storm will allow you to keep units in reserve up in the heavens above, effectively your army striking down from Azir in these sort of first strikes. While Watchful Guardians will let you fight with a Stormcast Eternals force that is already in the Mortal Realms, that is, you know, more grounded, isn't coming in from the table, has more defensive abilities, is using, you know, their tactics more, and not so much of shock troops as the rest. Narratively, I think a really great way to play your Stormcast Eternals campaign is actually mixing up the 2 options here. Now, a great way to do this is either in your first game in a Path to Glory campaign, or a game in a battle, game after a battle in which your army was wiped out, especially if you had units or heroes die. Have that unit and your army use the Signs of the Storm rules. This shows, you know, you're striking down from Azir. You're either entering the campaign or you're coming back to the campaign after a defeat. Any other game that, you know, leaves with you winning or your troops still on the table, you should use the Watchful Guardian rules, I think, as this shows your army is more situated in the Mortal Realms then, and maybe, you know, you can bring along things like your Mortal Auxiliaries, the Cities of Sigmar units you can bring in as coalition allies into a Stormkeep army, which is really fun as well and helps create a little bit more narrative for you. Now, lastly, choosing your realm. Stormcast Eternals, all of them will hail from Azir. This is just where they're forged. This is part of the narrative for them. But this shouldn't be restrictive for you. This doesn't mean you have to, base your models in Azir, or you have to, only use Azir-based lore for your narrative and your background. Your army obviously is going to be fighting in the other mortal realms. Azir is, Sigmar's safe realm. And so with this, wherever you choose to strike, maybe your campaign is set in Shaiish. So you can base your dudes and sort of modify your dudes based on some Shaiishan stuff as well. But maybe, as the campaign grows and your group maybe moves through different realms, or you fight other players in different realms and stuff like that. You play through other campaign arcs like Thondir and the Realm of Beasts and stuff like that. You can choose to sort of modify and change up this narrative and build upon it. I think realms shouldn't be something that's set in stone. You should move it along, Your army is obviously, from Azir, your Stormcast. That's something that just exists. But maybe the first 3 games or 4 games you're playing with this, your army's fighting in Ghyran against a particular set of enemies, but then maybe you move to Shaiish. So does your army change, or do you mix in that Shaiish and that Ghyran, different abilities and different effects and different sort of story that you've built up there? And so, step 2. This is choosing your starting size and starting territories for the force. Now, there are 4 different starting sizes to choose from: Vanguard, Warband, Brigade, and Legion, though these should in no way be too restrictive. Each of these starting sizes will give you a number of starting territories and a stronghold, a points limit, a unit limit to follow when first adding units to your battle as well as some starting glory points. Now, like I said, these should in no way be restrictive. If you are wanting to play a different points value, you certainly can. I would suggest going with the one that is, the next one up from where you're playing. So 600 points would be 600 points and down below for what I would play it as. 1,000 points would be from 601 to 1,000 points. I would play 1,001 points to 1,500, and then 1,501 to 2k. And if I wanted to play more than 2k, I probably wouldn't start anything higher than, say, 2.5k. I think anything more than that, you might struggle with the rules, but you could certainly amend it to make it work. But anyway, all those will give you different points limits, which is how many points. It'll give you starting territories, which we'll talk about in just a sec. These will help allow you to pick different units. Your unit limit is actually how many different units you can include within your force, so a total number of units. And then glory points, they are effectively your currency throughout the campaign. You can use these for a variety of different things, bringing in new units, upgrading your stronghold, and pretty much everything throughout the campaign. Glory is what it's based on. These are those things you sort of measure your success by. How much glory do you have? And so once you've selected your starting size, this will give you obviously starting territories, and then you've got to pick your starting territories, which will help change your order of battle up, your unit limits, your starting sort of restrictions on there. Now, you have to choose from this list when you begin, although a lot of armies, especially those with battle tomes, will have their own special territories they can choose from, but these are coming later in the campaign, not at the start. So first of all, you have Old Keep, increase your heroes; Wildlands, increase your monsters by 1; Forgotten Mine, increase your war machines, limit by 1; Arcane does the same to Wizards; Sacred Site, +1 to your priest limit; Small Settlement, +1 to your reinforced units limit; and Ancient Roads, and extra allied units added to your limit as well. So all of these are just, pretty basic, and you will have generally your starting size will be restricted by 3 hero units, and then your unit limit in total, and then you've got 1 of all the other things, which are monster, war machine, wizard, priest, reinforced, and allied units. Now, it's important to look at those in particular, because war machine is a keyword on things, not artillery. So there are differences there than what you would normally think straight away. So just worth making sure on that. Same with priests and wizards. They're heroes, but they also have a limit of their own as well. Now, Stronghold is something you'll get in addition of this, and this is sort of a imaginary place that you're sort of imagining you to build in the background of your sort of quest out into the mortal realms. Now, you will begin the game with a Stronghold, and this will allow you to do the following things. First of all, you can control 3 territories at once, so this means it'll allow you to start playing with a Legion straight away. You can build up to 3 barracks, and you can also establish up to 1 outpost. All of this can sort of be increased with glory, as mentioned. That's sort of what that all is there for. Now, it's definitely worth sort of, naming these sites is where it really becomes fun. Naming your stronghold, giving it a cool sense of purpose. What realm is your stronghold in? why is it called what it is, what has it done, and you know, maybe this is something you don't want to name too fanciful at the start, and maybe it can get a name throughout the campaign. It can just be, you know, for the Stormcast, it could just be the castle of the Beast Slayers, and then later it could be to, you know, maybe you've gone out and you've killed heaps of dragons throughout your campaign. It can be called the Dragonbone Keep or something like that. Same with all these special locations, you know, maybe base them off your characters, you know. So maybe you have a sacred site there and your wizard is called Balthazar, and you can call this Balthazar's Arcanum or Balthazar's, you know, something, Balthazar's Waypoint, etc. Next is your order of battle. Now, as mentioned in the previous step, some of the things you did in the previous step will influence this order of battle. And this is really where you start to bring together that narrative for your force. What is it about your force that makes it cohesive? And we'll talk about some things and some ideas for Stormcast in just a sec, but we'll get through all the rules stuff first. So, first of all, you need to populate your order of battle with your roster of units. Now, this is where picking your territories is important, as this will open up other things. Now, as mentioned on your starting order of battle, you'll be allowed to pick up to 3 heroes and 1 of each monster, war machines, wizards, priest, reinforced units, and allied units. It should be noted that a priest that is also a hero will take up 1 of each. Same with a wizard that is also a hero will take up both your wizard slot and 1 of your hero slots. You will also have a cap on the total number of units you can take based upon your starting size. So this is something like, say, 12 units if you are playing in a brigade, or 16 different units in total. Not the number of different war scrolls, the number of actual units included, including all of the units, heroes, everything. Now, your warlord must also be picked at this point, and you cannot change your warlord until he or she or they die. Now, you must pick a model in your army to be your warlord, and it must meet the following criteria in order to be your warlord. So it must be a single model that is a hero and a leader. So it must be both. This does rule out some heroes. I'm thinking things like Doomseekers or Grimwrath Berserkers that are heroes but not leaders. But it also must be from the faction of your Path to Glory army. You can't bring in that ally unit to be your general, though maybe there could be some narrative sway on why this is, you know, a thing. Same with your hero or leader thing. All of these things in Path to Glory, I think it's really important to, if you have a strong reason why this thing or this person should be your leader, then let it happen. Should always be the way to go. Let the cool thing be the thing. But I think the most important thing is it can't be unique. It can't be a named character. There's definitely some cool ways you could use named characters, but I think for the main purpose, you're going to want to be creating your own character stories. Now, this isn't to say you can't include named characters within your warband. They just will never upgrade or never gain any extra abilities and can't sort of, you know, receive any of the cool things that Path to Glory really brings, but you certainly can include them if you want. Now, on the point of battalions, endless spells, and invocations, you can choose 1 core battalion or 1 Warscroll battalion, which are battalions specifically made for narrative play. Your faction has access to, so no, you don't actually need to have access to it to begin with. And you can record this on your roster and put it in your vault. Same as you can pick 1 endless spell or invocation, not both. Sorry, Daughters of Cain, but your faction has access to it. The points cost of said thing will count towards your points limit. So if you're playing at 1,000 points, starting, 80 point endless spell will cost 80 points of those 1,000. And once again, note it down in your vault. Now, faction terrain, most of these are allegiance abilities, and depending what battle pack you're using, if you're using one of the standard battle packs, say for match player from the core rulebook, etc., if it doesn't say, if it is, one of those battle packs, you get your normal thing. But if you are using maybe one of the Path to Glory battle packs, which are really fun, or indeed some other battle packs like Thondia, then the battle plans sometimes will stipulate which players can and cannot set up faction terrain, depending on the story the battle plan is trying to get you to tell. And so let's talk about the Warscroll battalions and the narrative these can help forge. These are a fantastic way to help theme your army. Every battle tome will have these specific battalions. You can find them alongside the Path to Glory section of your battle tome in that narrative play section. They're specifically made for that. Now, they can represent specific formations within your army. They can represent, these different types of warriors that come together and form these different sort of groups that have these special rules and these sort of themes about them. Now, like I said, these are a great way to help theme and build that solid core of your narrative. And while many of these do include lots of different units, and you're probably not going to be able to play with them straight away, maybe you're not even going to pick it as your first battalion to have access to, but having one of them as that core of an idea of maybe where you want to go is certainly a great idea. So I'm going to go through them each in turn, and the first of these is the Warrior Chamber. Now this is made up of 3 different battalions. First of all, the Lords of the Warrior Chamber, which includes 3 to 7 Lord units. This is pretty simple. It'll be any unit that has Lord in its name. So Lord Imperator, Lord Castellan, Lord Relictor, Lord Veritans, etc. 3 to 5 Knight units, same thing. Knight Relictor, Knight Judicator, etc. All of that, any of those. You then have a Thunderhead Brotherhood, which will include 3 Liberator, Vindictor, or Vanquisher units in any combination, or 3 Judicator or Vigilor units in any combination as well. Now, you've also got your last one, which is a Hammer Strike Force, 3 Paladin units of any option, so Retributors, Prosecutors, even your different versions of Annihilators, and 3 Prosecutor units of either option you have available. Now they'll gain the ability when you have this battalion called Wrath of the Storm, where once per turn in the combat phase, when it's your turn to pick a unit to fight, you can pick 2 eligible units in the battalion instead of 1, and they fight one after the other in any order of your choice. So this is pretty much the core sort of force here for the Stormcast Eternals. This has got your line troops, some decent heavy hitters, some fast moving units, and some archers. A pretty standard sort of Stormcast line infantry force. Now the Harbinger Chamber is a bit more fast moving. So you've got the battalions Lords of the Harbinger, which is exactly the same as Lords of the Warrior Chamber, 3 to 7 Lord and 3 to 15 Knights. Generally you want to have them pretty fast units in there. Now, you can have a Vanguard wing as well as your battalion, which is 3 Prosecutor units and 3 Liberator, Vindictive, Vanquisher, Vigilor, or Judicator units in any combination. The ability for this is called Celestial Nimbus, and once per turn, 1 unit in the battalion can receive at the double or redeploy command without the command being issued. So you're sort of seeing, like, this is all about just having a more fast-moving sort of army. This is something where you're maybe going to see things like the Knight Azeroth and the Knight Venator in here a lot more. All those sort of flying Stormcast units go really well in here, but still some Lords and some Knights here that are definitely going to join your foot troops, which are also a part of the force. Maybe even some conversions and some Anvil of Apotheosis characters up to make, like a Knight Judicator that is maybe got the wings, or maybe, a Knight Relictor with wings or something like that as well. Next, we have the Exemplar Chamber. Now, this is a more elite formation of the Stormcast Eternals, especially from that first sort of wave, and indeed some of the later Thunderstrike wave. And we'll talk about the difference between, I guess, what we would call old cast and new cast. So, first of all, Lords of the Exemplar Chamber, same as always with these Lords ones, 3 to 7 Lords, 3 to 15 Knights. The Devastation Brotherhood, which is the other part of it, is 3 to 5 Paladin units in any combination of Paladins that you want. They've got the ability Martial Bond, where if a unit in this battalion is destroyed in the combat phase, you can pick one other unit in the battalion that is on the battlefield and they get +1 to attack with their melee weapons. Now, the Vanguard Auxiliary Chamber is where we start bringing in the Stormcast Vanguard units, so all the different scout sort of units we have access to. And this doesn't include any characters, but if you are looking for characters that maybe suit this particular battalion, you'd be looking at a Lord Aquila to sort of be your leader, and then other characters like the Knight Zephyros, the Knight Azeroth, and the Knight Venator, and indeed the Knight Judicator as well, all really do fit into the narrative and the theme of what this is all about. Fast-moving, shooting style Stormcast. You got the Vanguard Angelos Conclave, 3 to 6 of both Vanguard Paladors and 3 to 6 Vanguard Hunter units, and the Vanguard Justicar Conclave, 3 to 6 Vanguard Raptor units and 3 to 6 Aetherwing units. They have the ability Azerite Hurricane, where once per turn at the start of your shooting phase you pick a unit in this battalion that's on the battlefield, and you add 1 to the attacks characteristic of missile weapons that are used by that unit until the end of the phase. And so our last 2 Warscroll battalions. First up is the Extremis Chamber. This is all about the dragons. Now there is, once again, no character, specifically no Lord level character anyway. We do have the 3 Drakesworn Templars inside the Drakesworn Temple, but we don't have like a Lord unit to lead the force, so a Lord Celestin on a Star Drake would be the perfect place, or Lord Celestin on a Dracoth would be the perfect places to get someone to lead this particular type of force. But anyway, it's made up of 2 different echelons, both called the Lightning and Thunderwave. Now, these contain a Dracothian Guard units, 2 to 3 of Fulminators and 2 to 3 of Tempestors for Lightning echelon, and 2 to 3 Concussors and 2 to 3 Desolators for the Thunderwave echelon. Now, the ability for this is if your opponent takes a battleshot test for an enemy unit within 6 inch of 2 or more units from said battalion, they must roll 2 dice instead of 1 for the battleshock and use the highest roll. Pretty cool, you know, it's scary versus a giant ton of dragons with, you know, demigod warriors coming at you. Now the other one is the Sacrosanct Chamber. This is the Stormcast Chamber, all about the wizards. If you're playing like a game and a campaign where you're going to be playing like Nighthaunt and Death Armies and Wizards and all of that sort of stuff, this would be a really cool one to go with, as this is what they pretty much were sent out for, is to deal directly with the Nighthaunt. This is the faction of Stormcast that came out in the Soul Wars. So first of all, you have the Grand Convocation, which contains a Lord Arcanum of any variety, a Lord Exorcist, and 1 to 3 Knight Incantors. Your Hailstorm Battery will contain a Lord Ordinator, a Castigator unit, and a Celestar Ballista, while your Cleansing Phalanx is 2 Evocator and 2 Sequitur units. They have the cool ability Celestial Aura, where each time a unit in this battalion is affected by a spell or the abilities of an endless spell, you can roll a dice and on 5+, ignore the effect of that spell or the effects of that endless spell abilities on this unit. And so, and aside from everything else we just said, the last thing to talk about in this order of battle is First Forged and Thunderstrike. These are 2 particular types of Stormcast Eternals. First Forged, as they are often referred as, are all the Stormcast in the more sort of clunky, larger looking plate, the less sort of sleek and elegant models. This includes things like Liberators, the Lord Celestin, Retributors, Dracothian Guard, Vanguard Hunters and Paladors, your Sacrosanct Chamber Warriors, all of that sort of stuff, where the other type is called the Thunderstrike. Now, these are an innovation forged together by both Sigmar and the Smith god of the Dwarden Grungi, to create and to combat the darkened skies, dark magics of the demon prince Be'lakor. Now, Be'lakor, effectively, what the law for the Stormcast is that when they die, their souls are sent back to Azir and they are reforged once again to join the battlefield at a later date. Be'lakor trying to sort of stop this from happening, and he somewhat succeeded. Many Stormcast who now are killed and slain upon the battlefield will shoot up into the sky only to be caught by these dark clouds, sort of, you know, enveloping various parts of the mortal realms that Be'lakor has created. The Thunderstrike Stormcast, well, they explode more. They go up with such ferocity and such force in their power. Not only in-game do they actually have a higher chance of doing damage with the Stormcast rule that will allow you to deal damage upon death, they also have a higher chance, not a concrete chance, but a very much higher chance of actually breaking through the darkened skies of Be'lakor and reaching it to Azir to be reforged once more. This creates a really fun narrative for the Stormcast Eternals, as, first of all, it can give you an idea of how old your Stormcast Chamber and your Stormcast Storm Host as well is based on what warriors you choose to include. If you've only got Thunderstrike units, maybe you're a brand new forged Storm Host. If you have a mix, maybe you're something old, and maybe the history of your Stormcast Chamber actually dates back to the very first Realm Gate Wars themselves. Now, on top of this as well, it can really help to sort of, depending on what of those battalions you will, things like the Extremis Chamber and Sacrosanct Chamber we just talked about don't have any of these units available to them, though there's no reason you can't create your own Thunderstrike variants with a little bit of rules changing. I think you can have some really fun options to play around with. But this is certainly just something to think about on what you're sort of trying to build with that narrative here and what, you know, this is going to say about your Stormcast army. The last thing to mention here as well is it does create a really interesting thing for your characters, because the older Stormcast, the First Forged Stormcast, they have a very high potential when they die that they are dying for real. They are not being reforged. Where the Thunderstrike, have a much higher chance of actually going and being reforged. So it's a really interesting dynamic and can change how your characters actually feel about the world that they're set in. And so step 4, this is sort of still, I guess, almost part of step 3, but it is got its own sort of rules that base around what you're going to do in Path to Glory, so it is worth its own step as they've put down in the rulebooks. So in Path to Glory, there are 2 types of enhancements, both core enhancements and bonus enhancements. Core enhancements are enhancements normally granted by the core rules and your allegiance abilities. Effectively, the enhancements you would get for playing a standard game of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Bonus enhancements, on the other hand, are additional enhancements you will earn during the course of your Path to Glory campaign by completing quests. Pretty much, if you start with it when you play a game, it's a core enhancement. If you get it throughout the course of your Path to Glory campaign, then it is a bonus enhancement. Now, like I said, to begin with, you just need to choose your core enhancements. To do so, follow the core rules for enhancements, making sure you pick a triumph regardless of how many points you choose to spend on your starting force, because there will be games played where you are purposely underpointed, so your triumph is incredibly important to pick at the start. Now, extra enhancements is something that can happen. Certain sub-factions, allegiance abilities, or even other enhancements, normally command traits, will allow you to pick additional enhancements. Where this is the case, these are also considered to be core enhancements in all purposes. Even if this is something like, in this particular sub-faction, all monsters get a mount trait, or a monster trait, then all those mount traits there are considered core enhancements. Stormcast Eternals as well have their own unique set of enhancements called Holy Commands. When picking your army, be sure to select a Holy Command. This Holy Command will be considered a core enhancement as well. Something that is really cool is the Holy Commands. There is a big variety of these, and these can definitely go hand in hand with the types of units that you pick for your army. Definitely something to help build along that narrative and push, there are ones like Unleash Thy Hatred, which works on Paladin units, where, maybe you are building towards something like an Exemplar Chamber, so going like Unleash Thy Hatred really just pushes into the narrative. You can use these a lot, and these sort of will help give that little bit of extra narrative flavour as well to your force. And lastly, we have step 5. This is picking your first quest. Now, quests are the backbone of Path to Glory. These are where you will build upon your narrative, start to create a story, and explore the mortal realms with your force. These are going to be the center point of building your narrative. Now below, we've listed all the quests from both the core rulebook and the Stormcast Eternals battle tome into both beginner and advanced quests. Beginner quests are ones we suggest to either start your campaign with or can be taken into account and just done at any point during your campaign. Now, it should be noted that there's no reason you can't complete the same quest multiple times. So definitely if you are, just trying to maybe get some stuff done and build yourself up before you take on some of the more advanced quests, then it's definitely something you can do. Now, advanced quests, we're calling advanced in this for a few simple things. First of all, they either require you to be further along, needing, maybe a stronger force, or they simply require you to have certain things within your force or certain things to have happened during the campaign for you to be able to do them. And so, to begin with, beginner quests from the core rulebook. Search for artifact is just the basic one. This is just going out and getting extra artifacts. You don't need anything in particular in your force. You just need to be able to get some games in. Defend your realm and scout fertile lands, exactly the same. None of these here require anything in your force at all. Now, we've got 2 as well from the Stormcast Eternals battle tome. First of all, Guardians of the Dawn. Now, this is a really interesting one because this will use the Stormcast Eternals battle plans that can give you some extra bonuses if you end up winning them. What this type of quest does is you'll play through the quest, you'll then be able to play a battle plan that is sort of the end of the quest, and that battle plan will, if you can win it, will generate you a particular special reward. Also, the rewards of victory is another one. This doesn't require anything special for you to get at all. But when you complete the quest, you can pick 3 units that took part in the most recent battle to be favoured warriors instead of just one. So this is a cool one to get some extra renown on a bunch of your fighters. Now, advanced quest. First of all, we have 2 here, form warriors into battalion and hunt for the endless spell. These I never recommend really going for at the start because they do require extra things. Form warriors into battalion, generally you're not going to need an extra battalion at the start unless you've chosen your Warscroll battalion to aim for and maybe you want to include a battle regiment or something like that. Certainly something to go for, but I think if you're, picking the right one at the start, you probably don't have another battalion coming. Hunt Finny and the spell, you've generally only going to have one, maybe two wizards, so unless you're very particular armies, and which Stormcast I don't think are one of those, I don't think there's a reason to look for an endless spell. Master Magical Law, Seek a Deific Blessing, and Learn Ancient Scriptures all require you to have either wizards and or priests, so if you don't have them in your force, then these are certainly ones you don't want to pick until you do. Now, Stormcast Eternals Battle Tome, first of all, Star-Fated Beast. This requires you to have Stardrake, Draconif, Dracoth, Dracoline, or Griff Charger units to be able to do this with, and it must be a hero unit to do that with, so if you don't have them available, then this is not a quest to pick. And lastly, the Nemesis Eternal actually is dependent on what armies you've got. Your opponents need to have at least a Slaves to Darkness force, so you can only be doing and completing this quest against any of the different Chaos forces, Slaves to Darkness, Chaos, and the 4 Chaos God forces. So if these are not included in your campaign and you don't have people to play these against, then there's no reason to pick the Nemesis Eternal. And with that, that is everything to get started with for your campaign. I hope we've given a few different ideas, but now we're going to go through and we're going to look at all the Stormcast specific stuff that comes inside their battle tome for Path to Glory as well. Having a look at all the veteran abilities, the territories, the heroic upgrades as well for the force, and talk about how all these can work for your force. And so, first of all, let's check out our veteran abilities for the Stormcast Eternals. Now, we have 6 different veteran abilities we can take. These are in addition to any from the core rulebook. We won't go through those ones, though. We'll just take a look at the Stormcast Eternal ones, which I think really do benefit a lot of our units. The ones from the core rulebook generally are, very simplistic in what they sort of give. But first of all, we have a Step Ahead. This unit can use this veteran ability once per battle at the start of the very first hero phase in the first battle round, regardless of whose turn is that. Now, this unit can make a move of 6+. This is particularly good for units that maybe want to reposition, redeploy. If your opponent maybe has deployed aggressively against you and one of your units is now threatened or isolated, this could be a really cool thing to have. I think this is really nice to put on, say, some shooting units, or indeed on units that are maybe buff pieces to your force. Units that can provide, stuff like Vigilors, I think get a lot out of this. Their ability to put the ability of their suppressing fire out, but also, bring their shooting to bear. This could be a really nice one on them. It also is great for just being able to reposition your lines, maybe bringing in some 2-inch weapons away, or having, those 2 and 3 inch sort of gaps between your units moved around. This could be certainly something interesting. Foundation of Victory. Now, this is only for Redeemer units, so this means this is only for your Sequitors, your Liberators, and your Vindictors, and your Vigilors, which are all your different types of Redeemer units. Once per battle, the unit champion of this unit can issue a command without a command point being spent. I mean, this is just free command points. You've already generally got a lot of these going around a Stormcast army, especially if you're including Lord units like Celestins, and also things like the Lord, or the Lord Imperatant as well. So it could be a nice one. Free command point here and there is pretty cool, especially if a unit is isolated. Refuse to Fail. This unit can use this veteran ability once per battle at the start of the combat phase. Until the end of that phase, if a model from this unit is slain, they can fight before they're removed from play. If maybe one of your key units wants this, this is really great for allowing your key unit to effectively not go down without a fight. If you have, spent a decent amount of points on a large unit, say, a big block of Retributors or something like that, that maybe aren't the toughest or lack a little bit of defensive in ward saves and stuff like that, this could be a really fun one to chuck on them. Lightning Charged Bolts. This unit can use the veteran ability once per battle when it's picked to shoot. Till the end of that phase, if our modified wound roll for an attack made with this weapon by this unit is a 6, it inflicts a mortal wound in addition to any other damage. Now, this certainly is an interesting one. This could double down on mortal wounds from things like Vanguard Raptors with long strike crossbows and Judicators, because their current mortal wound ability works on the hit roll, so you definitely got double chances for 6s. But this also works really nice on units that maybe don't have mortal wound ability that have a high rate of fire. I'm thinking Vanguard Raptors with Hurricane crossbows and the Judicators with crossbows as well. Or even something like Vanguard Hunters, who can put out a decent amount of shots with those Bolt Storm bolt guns, things they have as well, which are really fun. Or even something like Vanguard Paladors. It could be really interesting to sort of put this out on. Total commitment. This unit can use the veteran ability once per battle at the start of the combat phase. This unit counts as having made a charge this turn. Now, this is certainly dependent on what you picked. We did talk about one of the abilities we can pick for the Tenants of the Gladiatorium that gives us +1 hit when we charge. So this potentially can go really nicely if you have picked that as an ability. Goes nice on them, but also goes nice on units that have bonus damage on the charge. I'm thinking Drakesworn Templars and stuff like that, where they get bonuses for charging. Is certainly something you want to have a think about. Those who burn brightest. This is just really cool. This is just allowing your Blaze to Glory battle trait to go off with like +2 to the roll. This I'd really only ever be worrying about if you put it on Thunderstruck units. I don't think it really has much purpose on some of the other units, but certainly maybe if you picked the final Thunderstrike as your Holy Command, putting this on a larger unit of your Thunderstrike units, like a unit of, say, 10 Vindictors, could be a really interesting one to pick. And so next we have the special territories for the Stormcast Eternals. Now, when making an exploration roll, if the roll is 61 to 66, that roll will correspond to a territory listed below. Alternatively, there are ones that correspond with these numbers inside the core rulebook, and you can choose to use that roll instead if you wish to do so. Now, some of these territories down below will allow you to send a unit to them. A unit cannot be sent to more than one territory in each aftermath sequence, and any such units cannot be picked for the Borderlands territory in the core rulebook. So to start with, first of all, we have the Abandoned Sigmarite Strongpoint. This territory has no effect until it's upgraded, and its upgrade will cost 5 glory points. You make it a restored strongpoint, and each time you upgrade a territory or your stronghold from then on, you reduce the cost in glory points by D6. This is a fantastic one to try and get as your first one if you can get it restored, and then all of a sudden all your other upgrade territories that are all these ones on this list can be upgraded in various different ways, will start being a lot cheaper to do. Now next up we have 62, which is the Training Grounds in Step 3 of the Aftermath sequence. You can pick one unit on your order of battle to be sent to this territory to train. If you do so, you roll a dice. On a 5+, the unit will gain D3 Renown, and you can upgrade this territory for 15 glory points to have increased capacity, where you can send 2 units to train to it instead of just 1. The Wild Metalith is next, and once again it has no effect until it's upgraded, and it will cost 15 glory points to upgrade. If upgraded, it becomes a High Scryer Island, and in Step 4 of the Aftermath sequence, you can roll a dice if you won the battle, and on a 4+, you add 1 to the number of quest points you gain towards your quest, if applicable. Pretty cool one to have, like being able to complete your quests a little bit quicker is always nice. Recaptured Realm Gate, you can never have more than one of this type of territory, and in Step 3 of the Aftermath sequence, you pick a unit on your order of battle to be sent out to patrol this territory. If you do so, you roll a dice. On a 4+, the unit will gain a Renown point, and you'll also gain a Glory point. However, on a 1, you must either make an injury roll or a casualty score increased by 1, whichever is applicable for the unit sent out. Upgrading it costs 15 glory points, and this increases you to Titan patrols. We can send 2 units to this territory instead of just 1. 65, we have the Ancient Shrine, where you can never have more than one type of this territory, and the territory has no effect once again until it is upgraded. This one is upgraded for 15 glory points, and it gives you the Favoured by Grungni ability. When you say that Grungni has overseen a Stormcast hero's reforging, you can spend 1 glory point to pick an eligible heroic upgrade for that hero instead of a number of glory points equal to the number of renown lost. This is pretty cool because it just allows your Stormcast to come back a little bit greater, and you know, not all Stormcasts that are lost and need to be reforged come back lesser. Some come back greater. It's not all that uncommon. We then have Geomantic Node, though, as our last special territory. You can never have more than one of this type of territory once again, and it can't be getting any effects until it's upgraded, and it does cost 20 glory points to upgrade. But it does give you the ability Secondary Reserves, where in each Aftermath sequence, you can reroll 1 injury roll or 1 casualty roll without a glory point being spent, which is pretty solid. And so last of all, we have the heroic upgrades for the Stormcast Eternals. Now, heroic upgrades, these are things that during the course of a Path to Glory campaign, you can pick, and they effectively upgrade your heroes with better Warscrolls. So you're generally upgrading, your lesser Warscrolls into your bigger heroes. For me, this is a big reason why when I start an army in Path to Glory, I will choose these smaller heroes to begin with, because this gives them, pathways to choose. And certainly, I think, once you start taking a look at this, you can find maybe, something interesting for your leader to sort of grow up on a path with. Now, you are only allowed to pick one heroic upgrade in each aftermath sequence. You can't save up and say jump 2 or do 2 different characters. You can only do 1 each sequence. And you'll need to ensure you do have room on your order of battle in order to accommodate any changes to the hero, such as them becoming a monster if you don't actually have enough space for that hero to become a monster. And for, 2 monsters on your order of battle, you will need to increase the monster limit to allow you to do this particular heroic upgrade. Core enhancement wise, your heroes will keep any core enhancements they are able to do so, even if they don't have any particular rules, but they will lose any that they have no longer got eligibility to. Say something like they are mounted on a particular mount that requires them to be on said mount to gain the ability, or they are, required to be a certain character and that character is no longer what they are, so they don't have access to it. Now, set heroic upgrades, we have pretty much, for me, there is 2 big paths here for characters. The first is starting with a Lord Celestin and having either a Knight Questor or Knight Heralder down to begin with. A Knight Questor can become a Lord Celestin, who then can become a Lord Celestin on Dracoth, who then can become a Lord Celestin on Stardrake, which is certainly one of the cool pathways to go with. The other one is Lord Arcanum on Taurolon. You can start with a Knight Incantor, which becomes a Lord Arcanum on Dracoline, then Lord Arcanum on Taurolon. They're your 2 real big paths for characters through this. Now, you do have some other cool ones. Knight Draconis, any of your knights that aren't wizards in your force can become Knight Draconises. Lord Imperator is a different upgrade available to the Lord Celestin. So if your Lord Celestin just wants to go 1 more, he can become a Lord Imperator, but that does stop there. And yeah, there's a few different options in there of what you want to do. But for me, this is nice. This certainly isn't all. I think there are other options for some Stormcast Eternal units, like the Lord Arcanum on Chocobo on the Griff Charger. That certainly could be put in here and just put it on the same thing as the Dracoline. I think that would work perfectly well. Or indeed, do you want your wizards to be able to become Knight Draconis and be a Knight Draconis wizard? I don't see any reason why you can't do that. This is native play. That's the sort of stuff you've got to make exceptions for here. If you want to carry over and you want to sort of carry over all equipment and keep things being a wizard when they, move over, these are all things you can discuss with the people you're playing your campaign with. And I think there's certainly options for doing such a thing when you do this. But this is everything we have for Stormcast Eternals for Path to Glory. I hope this video has been helpful to anyone wanting to get into Path to Glory, build a story up with narrative play. Let me know what you think of the video. This is the first one we're doing like this, and this took an awful lot of time to get done. So I'd love to hear what people thought about this, what they want to see, how we can make this better, what you want to sort of see in this particular type of video. Really going into depth, talking about the Path to Glory systems for all the armies in Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this. I hope these are something that people have been asking for, so I hope this is going a long way to giving what people have been asking for. Well, that's the end of the video. We hope you all enjoyed. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and also drop a comment down below letting us know what you enjoyed about the video. If you'd like to come chat more with me and other members of our little community here at Sinful Gaming, we have a Discord server which is linked down in the video's description. Also linked down in the video's description are the best ways to help support the channel, either by Patreon, YouTube members, or by grabbing yourself some merch from either our Ko-fi or Teespring stores. All of those things are linked down in the video's description. As a special thank you to everyone who does support us via Patreon and YouTube members, we'd like to give you all a shout out. So thank you to our Patreons, Christian Weir, Soren, Kenny Lowe, Outer Shot First, Andrew Bowen, The Rising 8, Pure Dynamic, Anthony B, JJ Austrian, Average Wargamer, Domir, Mark Harvey, James Cater, Benjamin Swallows, Red Martin, Iron Grinch, Nicholas Colomos, Colorblind Magic, Daniel Everington, and Andy C. And to our YouTube members, Green Roots Gaming, Ronya, Lock Lorick, The Johnny 84, David Ellsworth, Wolfric Nick, Broken Chef, Ariana Edwards, Revenar, Pink Nico Fire, Robin Mankiller, Monty Tabletop Terrain, John Castle, Davis Weir, James South, James Tillman, Dylan Areno, Gargamel 196, and Disco. Thank you all so much for your support, and if special shout out to Lady Witchfox Art, who does all the amazing artwork for the channel, and to everyone who helps run the channel, whether that be on the Discord server as our mods, on our live stream mods, or the guys that come around and help provide the battle reports for you all to watch. Thank you all once again, everyone. Stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the Grey. Ciao for now.